All right. The ethics video I will be doing for this week is Chapter 14, The Case of the Rape Victim. Now, the alleged reporter McFadden, however, if I pronounce it wrong, I do apologize, but McFadden is what I've been pronouncing it, has been trying to figure out how to report a case of a rape victim and also an alleged murder of the supposed rapist at the time. And the reporter is trying to figure out how to conceal the identity of the victim, being that she was so young at the time, and he wanted to keep the identity of the victim concealed so that her life is not very much affected by what has happened to her. And but he still wants to inform the public of what has been going on and what has happened to the victim, also supposed rapist at the time, or the murder of Mr. Taylor. Now, as Miss Fadden had go deeper into the case, he figured out that Mr. Taylor, who was the possible rapist of the victim, was also the father of the victim as well. And he was trying to figure out how to compose this information because in this type of situation, the incident had happened in a very small town. So people are very known upon each other. They are very well known upon their community. So I feel like he was trying to figure out how to keep it vague but give as much information to the community, because even the smallest idea of who her father was, or where she went to school, the area they lived in, that was very confidential information that could really expose who this victim was. And that's not what the alleged reporter was trying to do. He was trying to keep in this information so the victim was not very harmed against what was going on with her, opposed to trying to get all the information out of the community and possibly affecting her life and how it went on from then. And some of the questions that were really spoke to me was like, would you reveal the rape victim, or would you basically reveal the name in for the reporter or for the story just to inform the public? And personally, I do not believe I would have done that, just for me, because I would not want her, because in the story she was possibly about maybe 15, 16, so just starting out in high school, and these kind of things at high school can very reflect on that victim's life, and it can really change how she grows up from them entirely. And that's not what you're trying to do as a reporter. You're just trying to inform the public, what has been happening in your community and what has been going on, because the community would like to know what had happened, what's the story. People are very intuitive and very interested in to see what happened in this small town. But you are stopped with the difficult task of trying to figure out how to basically make it confidential so that the victim is not revealed, but also give as much information as you can without lying or manipulating the story or trying to make it as vague as possible. And that's where McFadden was very stumped. And I feel like the stigma of rape victims trying to personally feel for the victim, I feel like that is not what that child needs to go through while she was going throughout high school, and going throughout and trying to fill out her purpose in life and trying to get to a good college, because these kind of stories can affect a person's life, because everybody has their own opinions, and she cannot change or direct the thinking of what others may feel on the situation. And that's what I feel could possibly traumatize the victim as well, because in some cases, sadly, which is true, the victim can be seen as the reason or the whole perpetrator to how this situation or incident has happened to them, even though they could have nothing to do with it or what has happened. And being the victim, it can be very hard to stay the victim in other people's minds and other people's opinions. I personally, I would not reveal the relationship between the accused perpetrator or the victim and the rape victim, because I don't think in that given moment it possibly would have been even better than revealing the names, because like I had said before, it is very close knit community. It is also a very tight, everybody knows their names and where their street is and where everybody lives. So I'm pretty sure if you release not only the relationship but the location of where the victim were or who they associated themselves with, it was not hard to figure out who that perpetrator was, or who the victim of the murder was, and who basically the rape victim is as well. That is not typically the case. If the case in this situation being that he wants to keep the identity hidden, I don't think in this case it would have been safe, knowing that everybody would have found out about the situation later on. Now, in a follow up story, being that, she's 19, she's about to move on with her next stage in life. Hopefully, she is moving out of the area into bigger and better on things. I do believe you can reveal the relationship of the perpetrator and the victims of the murder and the rape, just because I feel like the relationship will make it clear to the people without really accentuating the names and really revealing who that person is, because I feel like in setting that they kind of already know who the names belong to. So I feel like the relationships will kind of just add on to, or kind of just it will basically be in agreement with what they were thinking already, like, something that has already basically confirming what have already thought already. Now, if a rival newspaper names the victim, is it okay for your paper to name the victim as well? I do not believe that's typically okay, being that if this is a very tight knit community, and also if this is, a paper that was within the community, I don't think they would have thought it was, appropriate for them to expose them like that. Being, even though a rival newspaper has revealed the victims' names, I feel like that rival newspaper should take the heat for their mistake, being that they have not kind of gotten an agreement from the victim to say that, even though it's in a police report, the victim did not say that they wanted their name out there, and they didn't say they wanted this story to be broadcasted on news. So I would feel that the safety of the victim and the whole ordeal of trying to keep it ethical and making sure that this victim still does feel safe in her community, I feel like that's such a big thing people need to worry about. If the victim's family comes to you and makes a personal request to maintain the maintain if the victim's family comes to you and makes a personal request to maintain the family's privacy, does that change the way you should cover the case? I do believe it should, because I believe that the way you cover the case is basically not only how you want the media to see it, but you also want to make sure that whoever is related to the victims or the family, you want to make sure that they are okay with this story. They don't feel like you're slandering, or you're making a mockery of the situation, or making them feel like the situation was a joke to them. I feel like their privacy should be concealed, as well as it's a good way for the family to heal in their own privacy of what has been going on recently within that family. You want to make sure that they heal properly. I feel like trying to expose them and exposing them to all these questions and people's curiosity and their own opinions, that's not going to make them heal properly. It's going to kind of wish their thinking, and it's going to make it very hard for them to accept what is going on, hearing all these different opinions. In this case, deputies confirmed the rape, but what if they hadn't? If you find out from neighbors that Taylor raped the girl but was unconfirmed by the sheriff's department, should you go ahead and report their comments? And how much does hearsay impact your coverage? I personally feel like, in my personal opinion, do not try and report these comments until you have a really logical and a very appropriate source that can confirm that this has happened. Because yes, neighbors can, be a very good resource as far as like confirming what stories are said, for confirming police reports if they may seem false. I feel like just going to the neighbors and basing your story off the neighbors is also not the brightest thing to do, because you also don't know the personal relationship they have with the said victims. So anything can be said against them, or it can be said in a slander kind of way. It could be said also in a way to support, but I always feel like you need a very logical and a very professional report to kind of back up your story and back up their comments, just so that way, if it ever comes back, and given that your God forbid, given that your information was wrong, you don't want to look like the fool for trusting a close friend. You want to make sure that your source was professional and you have gotten help, and that it's not backfiring on the newspaper. When covering the case, is it fair to publish the name of the victim, especially if she takes the stand? Does the practice change when covering a civil case as opposed to a criminal case? I personally believe that is up to the victim, because it is their life being affected. I honestly feel like they should sit down with the reporting group or the newspaper company, whoever is doing the case or reporting the case. I feel like they should sit down and they should be able to talk with the victim, and the victim should be able to say what can and can't be said in this report, what can be revealed, what she doesn't want to be revealed, because this is very sensitive and very personal information that is being exploited to the world. And I feel like you cannot just put it out there and expect everybody to be okay with it. I feel like, in a sense, for the safety of this victim and the close community that she is in, I would like to make sure that she has signed a disclosure agreement, just kind of make sure that we're and are aware that we are reporting this, but we want to make sure that we're not reporting it in any way that makes it seem like we're trying to hurt you or hurt the story that is being revealed. We just want to inform, because that's really what the point of this case is. He's not trying to reveal a story, he's just trying to inform the public of what is going on, while making sure that victim is very secure in their spot and they're not walking around on eggshells, making it seem like somebody is always watching them and judging them for what is happening on their serious case. And as far as what I personally feel from this case, as far as covering a civil case as opposed to a criminal case, I feel like the practice does change, where as far as a criminal case, it's not really much of it is much of hearsay, but it's not really much of concealing information. It's kind of like everything is out in the open, because the police reports and what has been done in this criminal case can be exploited in every kind of way. The perpetrator does have a say in what he or she may did, but it's not like they have a right or they have the opportunity to conceal their information if they had wanted to. Like, once their information is out there, it's out there, and the media is allowed to do whatever they say with it if they are able to get their hands on it. As far as a civil case, I believe that since you are dealing with a citizen, you have to make sure that this is within their rights. You have to make sure their rights are heard. You have to make sure that this is not in a way to harm their reputation, because they still have a reputation to uphold even after this court case, even after this predicament. So you want to make sure that each one is following within the guidelines. That way it's not changing the audience point of view of what has happened. It's not making the victim seem like the perpetrator, or the perpetrator is a victim and hearsay. It's just official news, real life facts, what's happening and what is going to happen, so on, further going through this case. You just want to inform and not slander somebody's name. And so that's how I personally felt about chapter 4, and through my answers. Thank you.